Hello and welcome back to my writing vlog series about Project Katrina. This is writing vlog number 23. I am going to write a completely new chapter instead of the old chapter 5, and this chapter is chapter 6 in the new version. I actually think that a big event that's going to happen later on in the story is going to happen later in this new version than in the old version, and I don't think that's necessarily a good thing. I think that it will happen about 1/3 of the way through the story, and I would have liked it or would like it to happen earlier than that, but that means that I will have to cut down stuff or skip some of the ideas for the future chapters or the next few chapters that are after this one that I'm going to write. I'm looking at my old versus new outline, and this chapter that I'm going to write now is okay, I think, because it's an important part of her internal struggle and her character arc, and we need that, I think. And the next chapter is also important because it's a direct consequence of what is going to happen in this chapter. Maybe I could combine them, but I don't know. I'm going to see where the story takes me as I write. The ideas that I have for the new chapter 8, 9, 10, and maybe also 11 are basically story events that I could skip or combine, maybe. An outline is always just a pointer for me. It's something to aim for when I write, and the outline can change during the process of the writing. So if I get a new idea, if I spot an opportunity to combine two story events, then I might do that. I'm going to adjust this outline as I work on the project, so it's likely that I won't have all of these chapters or have them in exactly the same as in my outline. I can adjust things because of something I wrote or actually added in the previous writing vlog. I think that I could move something up or closer to where I am now, so my main character doesn't have to go to additional meetings or to save this or help this other character, so that it's Dina that I'm talking about, that Dina is going to invite Katrina out for dinner. Maybe it's a rain check for from what I added in the previous writing log, what I added in the new chapter 5. Or actually, it might be chapter 6 and then this is chapter 7. But as I said in that writing log, I'm not going to add any more chapter numbers in the story itself because it messes up my outline. I already am a bit confused because I have the chapter number for the old chapter in, or for the chapter in the old version, and then the chapter number for the new one. And I have also kept the original chapter number in the column to the far left, so I can see that it's chronological no matter what, and then these chapter numbers correspond to the chapter numbers in the old version. So maybe it's redundant, but I like to keep that so I can maybe hopefully better understand my own thought process and really keep track of what I'm doing with the story. But I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do about the future chapters. As I said before, this one and the next one are okay because I don't want that to change. They are important to the core of the story. Maybe I shouldn't have added stuff before this. I took something out, but I added more than I removed. So I pushed the other things that happen, the other plot points, push them farther away instead of getting to that quicker. I wanted to get to it quicker, but I actually think that this novel is one of the shorter ones I have written. Of course, not all novels have to be over 100k. It's fine if a novel is, for example, 90,000 words or 80,000 words, but if it gets much below that, I think it's a bit short. It's a short read. There's nothing wrong with writing and reading short novels, but I tend to fall above 100k. I can tell you a bit about my novels that I have written so far. The very first novel I wrote is just above 110,000 words, and the next one I wrote is above 200,000 words. So I needed to learn how to condense things and get to the point quicker, but I hope that the very first novels I wrote are all right, even though I wasn't maybe as skilled a writer as I am today. And then the third novel I wrote is just about 60,000 words. That's actually a novel that I self-published, but it wasn't a big success. I only published it in Danish on a very small Danish market, and I didn't really tell anyone about it, so it didn't really sell anything. So because the platform I had it on, it's a Danish website. They sell books, but they also make it possible for writers to sell their own stories or other books on their website. And I published it back in, I don't even remember what year I did it, but I took it off the market again because it started to cost me money to have it on the platform, because it didn't really sell anything. So that was a side note, but I hope you enjoy getting a bit more insight into everything that I have going on in terms of writing and the novels I have written before. And I hope that by having this YouTube channel that I can actually reach more people, and that people know that I have something out instead of just putting something out there and not telling anyone about it. So if or when I'm going to publish something on Amazon, for example, I think I would go with Amazon. I would be sure to tell all of you about it. Of course, there's no obligation to buy anything that I publish, but if you do decide to buy something that I have written, it will help me a lot. But of course, there are no strings attached, and I don't expect you to buy anything. I won't put up any paywalls, and I also have this plan that hopefully it's when I reach 500 subscribers, I'm going to create my own Discord channel, so we can have a community there as well, besides commenting on videos and me commenting on other people's comments to my videos there. So I think it will only be a plus if I have other ways of staying in contact with people and making connections, and hopefully also dive deeper into gaming and writing, and have more of a dialogue instead of me just making content and a few people commenting here and there. So I like the idea or this plan that I have for creating my own Discord channel, but that was another side note. I have written a lot of novels at this point, and the fourth one I wrote was 130,000 words, and then 85,000, 62, 127, and so on and so forth. I have written a few short novels that are below 60,000 words. I'm looking at 3 I have here in my Excel spreadsheet. I like Excel to manage my writing, even though it's not a word processor, but I like to color code things, and I have columns with the total number of words, and then the next column has the number of chapters, and then to the right of that I have all of the chapters, and I have the chapter numbers in the very top row, and then I can see at a glance how many chapters there are, and I color code the individual cells so that the very long chapters are red, they have a red background, and the very short chapters have a green background, and then it spans from red to orange to yellow to green and dark green and stuff like that. So I can see, okay, I have few chapters, but they are very long, and other novels have very many chapters, but they are short. Like I said before, besides these few novels that are below 60,000 and one that's just above 60, I tend to write novels about 100,000 words. I can actually mark all of them here. And the average is 90,000 and 95 words, so just above 90,000 on average. So it it isn't far up when I said that I tend to write above 100k, but the average indicates that I actually write a bit less than 100,000 words, but that's okay. I've heard or read somewhere that you shouldn't write novels that are over 100,000 words when you're a newbie writer, and if you're trying to get a foot in the door at agents or publishing houses, then it's better to stay below 100,000 words. But of course, it is also dependent on which genre you write. Sci-fi and fantasy have a tendency to have higher word counts because there's more world building in them, and softer reads like romance reads and mystery novels tend to be about 80 to 90,000 words, I think. I have several pieces of information in this document as well. I have several sheets in the same document, and I have one that I have called boglængde og antal ord per side. I said that in Danish because it's in Danish here, but translated into English, that is book length and number of words per page for fiction in general and non-fiction, and books for children and young people. What the ranges are dependent on which source you look at, but in general for fiction it's 70,000 minimum and 120,000 maximum. Romance is 75,000 to 120,000. Crime thriller is actually a bit more, according to the document I have here. And fantasy sci-fi, I haven't stated a minimum but a maximum of 180,000 words. Literary fiction, I don't quite know what literary fiction is. Everything is literary when it's words, as far as I know. But the minimum ranges from 45,000 to 60,000 and maximum 120,000 to 150,000. I don't know why, but I have romance twice here. Farther down below in my document it says 40,000 or 70,000 and up to 100,000 words. So it's always dependent on genre conventions, but also people's personal preferences. You might have one agent that prefers the shorter reads and a publishing house that prefers long reads, but I think that for publishing houses, the bigger the novel or the longer the novel you write or you have, the more pages it will take to print the physical book. And the thicker the book is, the more expensive it will be for them to actually publish that. But if you work with ebooks and publish your novels digitally, then a word count doesn't matter that much in terms of resources for print. If you print a novel, then you have to make the cover and you have to have a lot of paper to be the book. It requires a lot of paper and pages to make the long doorstopper books. I can mention Stephen King's Under the Dome. It's a very long book. It's an interesting read, but it's very long, and I think that someone would call a book like that a doorstopper because it's so heavy and thick that you can put it and then put it on the floor, and then it will stop the door from slamming shut. So um, yes, that's another side note. But I find it interesting, and I like to know at least somewhat where my novel should fall. But I can look at it at a glance, and then I can see I have several sheets and document, as I said, but I can see number of words and number of pages in Word and approximate, and then how many books or pages in a book it will be, and the actual number of pages when I print it out and stuff like that. This other sheet that I have all of these chapter information numbers, if you can call it that. I can see very briefly how long a novel is. The newest one I have is Auras of Faith slash Fate, or actually, I did a writing blog series, or I have some writing blogs up on my channel that are about that project, but I haven't updated the word count. And the project I'm working on now, or should be working on, I think I'm just finding reasons not to jump into the document and then actually write this new chapter. But I have that in this document as well. Yeah, it's up here. The original novel was about 87,500 words. It's below my average, but it's still within the range of that genre, I think. I'm not actually sure about the genre. It might be called fantasy or urban fantasy, or I don't think it's sci-fi or something like that, but I think it's okay that I go a bit above the average, or that I write a bit longer than other kinds of fiction, because there's a bit of world building in it. Not that much, but it mainly takes place in a very urban or suburban environment, and so there's not much world building in that sense that I have to come up with a lot of things on my own. I just have to describe a house or something that they're in. I meant to work on this new chapter 6 and write something completely new for that. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do with the future chapters, but that's not a problem for me yet. So I'll try not to worry about that and just focus on the task at hand. Or it annoys me that I can't think of the right word, but in Danish it's called overspringshandling. So it's an action you do in order to to not have to do something else. Procrastination. That's the word. I should stop procrastinating by telling you everything about my writing and other stuff, and just get to work. So I'll try and do that. Hello again. It's later in the day, and I have written an entirely new chapter 6. I actually ended up combining this chapter with the next one because I only had one sentence or something very short for what the next chapter would be, and because I had added something to a previous or to an earlier chapter, the other thing that I wanted to write in the next chapter I have already written, and so it was easier, or it would make more sense if I just took that other part of the next chapter and combine it with what I have just written. So I think it's better this way. That means that the timeline of the story, or the events aren't moved further away but closer. And the story is changing, so it's more about the main character and her thoughts and feelings and how she's dealing with this new life of hers instead of everyone else and what they're doing, and focusing on side characters that aren't really important to the main theme or the main idea of the story. And I want to keep the focus on the main character, Katrina, and what she's going through. It's a bit hard for me to go into detail with what she's thinking and feeling about this situation that she's in when I won't spoil what it is that she's going through. I don't know if you can figure it out, but I hope it will be a surprise to you when or if you read this story at some point, or if I tell this story in detail at a later date far away into the future. I hope it won't be that far into the future as other projects are going to be, because I want this one and the one I worked on in the previous or earlier writing logs to be the first two novels that I actually finish up and proofread and make covers for and actually publish. And so I want to focus on this story and auras of faith/fate, and take them from this first draft that they're in, and then working on them, or not first draft but second drafts, where I haven't really made bigger edits and these big picture changes that I want to make. The other project that I wrote recently is just sitting on the shelf, and I wanted to stew a bit more before I go back to it and can look at that with the fresh and hopefully objective eyes when I read through it again. But this one has been sitting and brewing for a long time at this point, so I think I can work on this the best way that I can. And as I have said earlier in other writing vlogs, I think I've become a better writer since I wrote this in 2019, and so I should hopefully make good and qualified corrections and edits to this story now that I have learned more about writing. There was a time when I didn't want to go to a school or to take some kind of education within writing, because I was afraid that I would lose my own voice, that I would write in the way that you are meant to write and not in my own way. But going to a writing school or taking writing courses, I don't think that makes you lose your own voice, but that you just learn these tools and broad ideas about how genre conventions are and what do's and don'ts exist within the writing world. And so I have learned a lot anyway, even though I didn't want to go to a school of writing and to learn how to write. I might have ended up where I would have been if I had done that, but instead I have other educations and I have written a lot. So I hope that just by writing and learning about writing have made me a better writer and hopefully a good writer, even though I haven't been formally schooled, so to speak, in how to write the right way. I think you can take a framework for how you are meant to write a certain genre of story. There are rules within that, of course, but you can break the rules, and it's easier to break the rules when you know the rules, but you still have some free rein to do what you want within that framework. I don't know if I can think of a specific example, but if you take elements from very different genres and combine them, it might work, but it might also fall flat because it has never been done before, and maybe it hasn't been done before because it doesn't work. It's not optimal to tell a story in a certain way. If you can combine things, maybe a plot point from one thing and an overall idea from another, and then a theme from a third genre or something, you can combine that in a way that makes it unique, and if it works, it works. And so you can still come up with original ideas that inspire people and entertain people. And that's what I want to do with my stories. I hope that I can combine things within the set framework of a certain genre. I'm not quite sure what the genre of the story that I'm writing actually is, but maybe it's urban fantasy or fantasy, like I said before, but it might also just be literary fiction or mainstream fiction. I'm I'm not quite sure about the genres, but I hope that some specialist in the in genre conventions and stuff like that will be able to tell, oh, this is a story like this, and so it would fit on this shelf in a bookstore. I'm not that concerned with what genre I'm actually writing, as long as I follow, or at least I think and hope that I follow set rules within a genre. Of course, it's hard to follow the framework of a genre if I'm not really sure what genre I'm writing, but I'm just writing a story, and then I hope the story will speak for itself and that the genre isn't important for a reader to understand the story and stuff like that. I don't know if I am explaining it properly, but it's like a meal. If you serve someone a meal, it's not important what kind of meal it is, if it's a dessert or a main course or an appetizer, as long as it tastes good and as long as the person you're serving it to wants more of that. It doesn't matter if it's one thing or the other, and it doesn't matter either if you call the dish someone or something specific, or if you just give it a random name like XYCB22 or something like that. It will be harder for people to remember and pronounce, but that's beside the point. I think that by comparing a novel and the genre to food and their recipes and their names and what kind of purpose they serve is not that important. So as long as the cook serving the food will know when to serve it, then that's not my concern. I'm just writing the story, I'm just cooking the food, and then someone can do with it what they need to do. I hope that makes sense. But yes, I have written an entirely new chapter, and I combine it with the next one, so my old versus new outline has changed a bit because I'm moving things up, and then I will need to adjust that. The chapter numbers will be a bit off now, but maybe they'll actually go back to matching, but I'm not sure. I will figure that out. Math isn't my strong suit, but I'm more into words, and I'm a bit of a word nerd, and so I love languages, and I guess that's one of the reasons why I have chosen the educations that I have, or my bachelor and my master's degree. I'm actually a multimedia designer as well, so I think I have some skills that I can use in my work with YouTube and writing as well. But yes, I'm not quite sure what else to tell you. This chapter, I won't say that it wrote itself, because it's hard work and I actually have to sit and write every single word. If I actually say that it felt like it wrote itself, then it's just an expression of the fact that it was kind of intuitive for me to write the opening to that chapter, and then when that was done, I knew what I had in mind, and then it was just a question of getting that those words onto the paper and into my document. I tend to see a scene in my mind, and then I can imagine what people will say and what they're going to do in a certain situation. And of course, it's also dependent on the characters' personalities and other stuff like that. And I also think about how the characters speak and what someone would say if they're a grandmother compared to what a child would say. People speak differently, according to their age, but also their background and their personalities and other things. So I think that it makes sense, this scene that I've just written, and I combined it with something else. It was just, like I said, it was just a single sentence or something, but I didn't need an entire chapter to write that. It wasn't a scene in and of itself. I needed to combine it with something, but that I had already used that earlier, and so I could put it in here, and it fits where it is now. And I think it's better this way, instead of having a long chapter and a very short chapter, because I just needed to add something. So the consequence of what the main character does in the in the primary part of chapter 6 happens at the very end of the chapter, and so we close with that instead of having that be a separate chapter. But yes, I think I have rambled on enough for now, so I will end the writing vlog here. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you will watch the next one. Until then, take care. Thank you for watching.